do we do like an intro that says, "Hey, I'm so and so, and this is what I do, and this is rah 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 rah."
Well, I mean,
Nah,
no,
someone
Nah,
has to put
people.
the effort in to watch it all.
This is the
yeah,
intro. People who are watching this already
yeah.
know who
Yeah,
we
people
are.
know who we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably
People know us,
some
mate. I've
people
got,
won't.
I've got, I've got 7 followers, man. People know us.
I mean, all four of us know who we are, and we're gonna anyone's watching it or listening to it.
Well, you gonna watch this again?
No, yeah, so it kind of caused me to say what is a documentary, and I brought up with you earlier, Key, about Tiger King, and I was saying how I liked it, and then you said you didn't like it because you'd found something out that changed your opinion of it post the documentary. And what was it again?
Yeah, well, basically, I I liked the start of the series, and I thought it got weaker and weaker as it went along. But when I'd finished it, I read an article that basically said from one of the filmmakers said that they had to cut around Joe Exotic using the N word a lot. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. I can understand that if you don't want that word in your broadcast. But the filmmaker then went on to say, and the reason we cut him saying that is because we wanted the audience to feel a certain way about him. And we thought the audience would like him less if he was using the N word all the time. And that made me think, but then you're not showing what the true character is, and you're trying to manipulate your audience. And I don't think that's cool, because you're trying, that's then not, in my eyes, that's then not documentary. That's twisting the truth to make your audience feel a certain way about something. When the reality of it is, he seems to be a fairly awful human being, and they're trying to make you feel warmer towards him than you actually should in order to get a story.
Yeah, and I agree with that opinion in a certain way, but I also kind of I give the filmmaker that creative license because it's their film. And I would argue that maybe us learning about the censorship there would take away from the themes and the what they're trying to give us, like trying to make our mind up on certain things. And I feel like in Tiger King, they're trying to make us think, oh, did he or did he not deserve to be in prison? And did Carol Baskin, what was their relationship like, and who was on the right or wrong side of that? And I feel like something like that, even though it's true, kind of skews that balance. And I feel like they want you to be on like sort of like either side of the fence by the end of it, because that's for me, that's what's a good documentary personally, is that you feel like you think it was unbiased, and you're basically saying that you found out afterwards it clearly wasn't, it clearly was biased, and then that affected your enjoyment of it, or like your appreciation of it. Whereas I kind of assume it's going to be biased because as a filmmaker we know that how we put a camera angle, how we set up a shot, what we put in the frame is going to dictate what someone's opinion is. So for example, if you put the camera above someone or below someone, it gives authority. How much you let them talk is going to give you like more information, etc., etc. So I feel like as soon as we turn the camera on, we have a bias as a filmmaker. So I don't mind that, but what I don't like is if it's too obvious.
And I think that was my problem with it, because I think it was in the final episode, there was a scene where Joe Exotic is talking about, and I had these, I think it's 2 tigers he had, or 2 bears or something, or 2 panthers or whatever.
Gorillas.
Monkeys, gorillas. Yes, it was, right. And he's
Thanks,
like,
Will.
oh, maybe did I keep them apart? Maybe am I a bad person for doing that? Did I deprive them of all that love? And all the way through that, I'm just thinking, it's too late. I already think he's an awful person. Stop trying to make me feel that he's okay and I should feel
Yeah.
sorry for him. So I had already felt that they were trying to affect my opinion of each of the characters rather than just showing me the characters and letting me form my own opinion. So I felt they were doing that too much and too far away from what the real truth was.
But it is true that his use of the M word really has no bearing on the Tiger King. It doesn't change anything about the film, does it? Like if they cut in an N word every now and again, it changes nothing about the structure or narrative of the film.
It doesn't. Well, it changes the dynamic of the film because it gives you certainly to my mind, it makes me think something about that character that I wasn't otherwise thinking. So it does change the narrative in that respect.
Yeah, but I feel like rightfully so.
It's
racists
well,
look
you
down
don't
upon-
think it does because you regularly use the N-word. So for you, it just would be like nothing. It would mean nothing.
And thanks for editing them out of this podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Key's gonna do it, and he's gonna shed one tear. He does it. He'll become what he hates.
Oh dear.
But like, yeah, it doesn't change anything narratively in terms of what. Well, unless it goes off and veers into documentation about how racist he is. But it does affect like what people would think largely, because it would then blind them to the other stuff, right? Because you'd be like, I don't take this guy seriously because he's a racist, and then it spirals out of control. Yeah,
exactly. So if you want to make a serious film about tigers, you kind of need to get rid of the M word.
Yeah, it's true.
I see
Is the
I see
film
what
about
you're saying.
tigers?
No, I don't think it is about tigers. I think the film is about
Then
those
what's-
characters.
I feel like we've got an assumption of what documentaries should be, but then hardly any documentaries actually tick that box of like presenting a fair argument anyway. Like as an example, right? A great documentary that people have watched and influenced them is like Cowspiracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that watched that and decided to like adjust their meat intake, right? But nowhere in Cowspiracy is there interviewing someone that's really enjoying their meat and being like, I love eating cows.
Absolutely.
You
I completely
know what I
agree.
mean? Does that make sense? I know it's a bit of a stupid like comparison, but it
Okay.
like
But look, okay, so let's take I haven't seen it, but from what I can tell, what's the message of that documentary? For less, because there's the meat and the environment, and you need to eat healthy and whatever. We get the message, right? What's the message from Tiger King?
I think it was presenting to us a wild story that you can't believe is true, and I think a lot of my favorite documentaries are like that, and it's like, but then at what point is it like a reportage? Like, at what point do we just present stuff as news, or do we make it exciting? Because I feel like documentaries for me, they've got to be exciting, got to have good, good soundtrack, good pace, quirky characters, and all those decisions. It's almost like you're casting a film, but it's just you can't believe that it's fact, not fiction, right? That's what the best.
But it's not
documentaries
fact.
are.
But it's not fact. It's not fact. It's like faction,
Yeah,
It-
but that is what a documentary is
it's-
to me. That is a documentary. Otherwise,
Well,
it's just
yeah.
news. So that's kind of that discussion me and Key were kind of going back and forth on. It's like, for me, I don't mind that stuff's happening because I think that's part of the medium. But
I
where do you
think-
draw the line, and like who's what? Like if you manipulate an edit, then you kind of turn half truths into truths, right?
Sure. I think everything that you're watching is some form of manipulation, even if it's news.
Yeah, for sure.
For
like,
me,
yeah.
I'm okay with, shall we say, theme park or popcorn documentary if there's a message worthwhile. If it's just a story, for me, that's why, to me, that's self-indulgent, because I don't get anything from it. Maybe I have a similar reaction to, I don't know, Better Call Saul or something. It's oh wow, this is amazing, so I can't believe this is happening. But it's just like, oh, but it's real. So how am I supposed to feel about it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I for me, I'll say it to be clear, I'm not big on documentaries at all. The last documentary that I enjoyed was called The Great Hack. Have you seen that?
Yeah. So
Last year?
for example, the Great Hack, our lecturer used that as an example and hated it. He was
Yeah,
like,
I enjoyed it
I
a
don't
lot.
want to, yeah, but because it's like interesting information. He's like, oh, at that point, you're just reportage. It's not even a documentary. That was his words. He's saying, so the lecturer was saying that to him, The Great Hack isn't a documentary because it hasn't got enough of the
Interesting.
passion of the filmmaker. Like, you can't hear the filmmaker's voice, if that makes sense. Like, it's not passionate enough. It's more like, here is this story, make of it what you will. And he was saying that he doesn't like that form of documentary. And I don't know where I sit on the fence. I'm kind of framing up this argument to what Key was saying, but I'm not fully on board with it. I'm just kind of like, I'm starting to think about that.
Sure.
So on a broader sense, what do you guys think documentary is? Do you feel like you can be a bit looser with it as a filmmaker? Like, Will, if you got much of an interest in making documentaries, and kind of how do you feel like you got to tell the truth, or do you feel like you can manipulate it as a filmmaker?
Well, I've actually made a documentary, Chris. It's called Windmill, and it's available now on YouTube. But
Thanks.
but for that sort of thing, like I'm fine with. I think documentary is just basically if there's any element of unscriptedness to it, and it's real. The people in it are real people, not made up characters. I think that's probably a broad definition
and
of
that,
documentary.
and I'd say that's probably the line that they were taking in my course. For example, one of the directors that came on and gave us an example was he would cast, like, he would storyboard his documentary and script his documentary, but then he'd use it would be based on real people, and then he'd put those real people in the situation, and he'd call it a documentary.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, technically, that is a documentary, right?
I mean, but he has scripted it.
Yeah.
And it is technically different because he's calling it a documentary. But that is so much even further away from what Key was saying about, Tiger King was a bit contrived because they edited that and it adjusts your view of him. Is like that's so far gone the other way.
So much further down that line, isn't it? Yeah.
But it's still in the umbrella of a documentary.
Yeah.
Mm.
What would you be proud of making? We talk about, like, Will was saying he was happy with his work, and I'm saying I'm not happy with my work. But what would I like? What would I have liked to have made? And I say, like, I don't mind the reportage stuff. Like, one of my favorite documentaries is Searching for Sugar Man, because I think it's a fascinating story. I'd love to find a fascinating story and then do it justice and try and be as impartial as possible. But in my fascination of it, there's something that I'd like about it. And I guess that what I found the mystery is I'd focus on that. Like, say, in Searching for Sugar Man. Has anyone seen that film?
Yeah. Chris, it's an interesting one because I totally get what you're saying. I think I totally agree with you. And I think you will always obviously have an influence, whether it's unconscious or conscious. You will always have an influence and try and skew your film one way. But I think for me, Tiger King took it too far.
Well done, guys. I feel like we covered good ground today.
I feel like we got somewhere. We're 56 minutes in, guys.
I think between the four of us, we've just
Will, I
cracked
cut
what
you
a
off.
documentary is. No.
Well, I don't think we have.
That's all I
don't
meant.
think we have.
Should we, like, think of something cheesy to end it on?
Nah, I'm just going to end it.
I thought that was a great place to end it, really. Can you please end the actual podcast like that?
All right, see you later.